Alright, so now with the fuel tap sorted out, the tank's all cleaned out, the tank cap's all sorted out, we're all ready to bring up Big Bertha. So, we're going to get her up onto the table, start pulling off whatever bits we can. Might have to make a few blanking plates, then we'll start cleaning her up.
So the first thing we want to do is take care of draining the oil out of the motor. Now we're going to remove everything off the motor, so we're just working with just the base of the motor itself. As you can see, there's quite a lot of muck and grime we're going to have to take care of. Next thing we're going to do is remove the stator and the pickup out of the stator cover. Keep an eye out for this little fella trying to get away. And here we are cutting up some plastic tubes so we can slide them over the banjo bolts so we don't get any blasting media inside the bolts or paint on the threads. I found a bottle cap fits perfectly in the hole for the starter motor. We also found that the vinegar lid fit perfectly into the inlet, but we didn't want to just chance it at that, so we made a flange gasket out of plastic, put it on with the inlet manifold itself, tightened it down so it's nice and watertight. With the exhaust port, we chose to ram a rag inside the port itself. Then we made a plastic cover to push in place. Then we went ahead and made a wooden plug. Once it was cut into shape, we used a sander to round it off nice and snug. Then it sat inside the exhaust port, and we used a couple of nuts and washers to pull it up nice and tight. Now we're going to use some oven clean to help degrease the motor and get all the grease and grime off of it. Now it's time for the paint stripper. And just look at that stuff work. As you can see, the paint strip has done a sensational job of removing all the old paint. Now it's time to try out my new homemade aqua blaster. Only concentrating on the main crankcase and the cylinder at the moment. Now for our first bit of paint, only on the main crankcase and the cylinder once again. Here we are getting the new chain guide onto the swing arm ready for motor installation. We've removed the side covers, rocker cover and all the little individual pieces for individual cleanup and paint. We popped out the old water pump seal using a press. Here we are installing the timing chain tensioner. It is in the reset position, but there is no spring in for tension. We're going to clean this gasket off, as the next job we've got to do is we are going to be putting in an aftermarket doohickey. So this section here, we've got to remove the spring. Then in the pack you got two different size springs, the torsion spring and a new doohickey and a washer. If you plan to use the original type springs, you can use one of these two springs that come with a kit. We're going to use the torsion spring, so we need to drill a hole right there. Going to install a new gasket. Install the cover. On with our spring. This is the difference between the new doohickey and the old doohickey. Apparently the old ones had a tendency of breaking the welds, and when they did catastrophic damage, so a lot of people change them out. That just sits on the shaft, located. And you're going to grab the bolt, put the bolt in the doohickey and just nip it up by fingers so the doohickey sits still. Now we're going to use some pliers, pull the spring around and connect it to the doohickey. Make sure it's connected correctly. Undo the screw and the doohickey will take up its tension, then you can tighten it back up. Install the spacers. Back on with the flywheel. In with the bolt. New gasket once again. Just put a bit of oil where the shafts are going to sit. Then you can put in your starter gears. Don't forget that washer once again. Then we're going to go ahead and put our stator cover back together. Install our stator. I like to put a bit of gasket goo just around where the electrical setup comes through. All ready to rock and roll. Install the cover. Now we can put our spring back in our timing chain tensioner and tighten her up. Do a rotation of the motor to make sure everything seats correctly. And then in your flywheel you should see a timing mark. And then you should have a line with an arrow point to the front, a line, and then another arrow pointing to the front, and it should all be level with the top of the cylinder head. Install our plugs. And on with rocker cover. Now we're going to install the thermostat and thermostat cover. Bit of nickel coating on the frame bolts. And if you want to see how this is done, don't forget to check out my video in my playlist. Time to get the motor mounted up. Now we're installing the new clutch actuator arm bearing using a bolt and a socket setup to pull it in place. A little bit of grease, and we chuck in our new seal. Put our actuator in, rotate it a bit so it locks in place. Now we can put in our locking bolt. Put a bit of gasket goop around the kickstart cover. Press in place. Fit the new water pump oil seal. Then we got the new water pump mechanical seal. We've just gone and replaced all the seals. So we've got this seal here.
We got the oil water pump seal and then the mechanical water pump seal there. We got a new bearing and seal in the clutch actuator. So all ready to rock and roll.
Alright, once again we're putting a new gasket. Now we can go ahead and fit the cover. We're putting all new stainless steel bolts in here too. And we've got the water pump impeller, so we've got to remove the old seal from that. Thought while we were at it, we may as well give it a bit of a clean up. 100% better. New seal installed, we can fit the impeller. Bit of Loctite and put the nut back on. New gasket and cover. Now we haven't got an oil filter yet, so we're just putting the shaft back in. We're just going to put the cover on and finger tight the bolts. Here we're trying the copper coating on our electrolysis, and as you can see, it's turned out really good. You might be able to see in certain lights, you can see the copper really come through, but for this job it looks sensational. And here's our oil gallery tube. You can see she's a little bit ratty, so after a little bit of electrolysis, brought the nice silver back to it. Looks really good. Starting to really come together now. Here we are replacing the drive shaft seal. We also did replace the gear selector seal. Put a new sprocket in place. We also nickel coated our sprocket retainer and 2 bolts. I think we can all agree this looks 100% from what it first started out. Almost like a brand new motor.
Alright guys, so we're going to call that a wrap for this video. As you can see, we've got the motor back in the frame, looking absolutely fantastic. Really chuffed with how it's all turning out. Looking really good now at the moment, and with the new swing arm set up on it, looking absolutely fantastic. Still a heap of stuff still to come, so don't forget, if you're not subscribed to the channel, to hit that subscribe button and set your notifications for upcoming videos. I'm hoping in the next video we'll get into getting the carby installed, the rear shocker cleaned up and installed, airbox, subframe, and maybe even onto the exhaust and electrical loom. But we'll see how that video pans out. As you know, with these builds, things don't always go as planned. Things can go a bit wobbly. Sometimes we don't get all the stuff we want to achieve in one video, but as for that, we thank you for watching our videos. We hope you're enjoying the content, and if you do, please don't forget to hit that like button down below. We hope to see you back soon. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next time.